Hi everyone, today I want to talk about how to create your scientific poster. Specifically, what are the parts to a scientific poster? This is indeed different than what you would expect in a scientific paper. That Edpuzzle is going to be optional and will come later because some of you will not be making a scientific paper depending on what your uh, plans are on how much you want to accomplish this semester. And another thing that I want to keep in mind going forward is that each and every one of your posters will look very different from each other because they'll be individualized to the things that you accomplished in your paper. So some of you may have all the parts that I talk about today. Some of you may have only some of the parts that I talk about today. It's kind of optional and kind of more related to what you want to structure your poster up with. So let's go through the basics and I'll show you a couple of different versions of this and how different people organize their posters and what you can add or subtract into it. The first being the poster title up at the top there. That's kind of the way it goes no matter what titles go at the top. I would say you could probably use your title from your project proposal since that was already a pretty good title. You can manipulate that title as much as you like. Um, After that, you include a subtitle that has the name of the scientist, you, the institution, Fort Zumwalt North. You do not have to include an address or an email address. I don't want you to get doxxed and have people stalking you through this kind of stuff. So feel free to just leave it at your name and the institution name. Some people put logos at the top left and right of the poster. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. After the subtitle of the names of the people typically goes what is called an abstract. An abstract, as you've read in many papers so far, is a summary of the poster so that if someone didn't have a whole lot of time, they could read this and get a summary of all of this all together. It is typically written as a combination of one part of the introduction, one part of the methods, one part of the results, one part of the discussion, and that's it. This is entirely optional, but it can benefit you if you're having trouble writing a bunch on your poster and you don't have enough pictures, you need something to take up space. What may not be entirely optional is a introduction section telling me about the background to your topic. This could also be called background. Many of you have pretty good literature reviews that did a whole bunch of background research into your project, and that went directly into your project proposal. You could probably use your literature review and cut it down quite a bit to make it fit into the poster for the introduction section right here. And you can include any pictures that you got from your work before. The meat and potatoes of your project, though, will be the materials section, the results, and the discussion. So that's going to take up the majority of your space right here. When it comes to materials and methods, you might not even need a separate materials portion here. You could just go into methods because you're going to be talking about what you used. For methods, do not use a stepwise procedure. Summarize it as quickly as you possibly can. I'll show you an example of that in the future. Results section, you want as many figures as you possibly can so that you can show your results visually rather than just writing about them because nothing is more boring than reading results and trying to figure out what they mean. And then the discussion on this side will be on the shorter end. You're telling us what your discussion or what your results tell us about the project itself. You may have a references section. I have figured out a way to reduce the size of this section by using QR codes and having people look up your references separately. But your references should only reference the citations that you used in your introduction or conclusion, or your abstract if you do one for that. This last section here, acknowledgments, is a section that you give to thank people for helping you with your project. Let's say you have a friend or a very supportive family or me who has spent time and time and time with you or resources with you to make your project work out. You can thank them in the acknowledgement section. Here's an example of how to lay out your poster for these projects from University of New Mexico. Um, they actually have their title left oriented, and they're right, it should not go beyond 2 lines. They have their name of their organization school underneath right here. They have their logos to the right, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't seen that before. They have a big old section for the data and figures and images that you create for this project, and the results going down at the bottom here. That's a great way to do that. Another section that they have is future activities. If you think that you're going to continue this research on in the next level, you intend to add to this project, you could list stuff like that here. You could definitely use bullet points and just do 3 or 4 bullet points. Don't have to do a whole bunch here. Notice they did not include an abstract. You don't have to have an abstract. Notice that their introduction is very short. So notice that the posters all look a little bit different based on what the needs of the writer is. Here's another example from University of Texas. They go straight into the background. They have research questions, almost like an objective sentence, telling us clearly to how they stated the problem that they're trying to solve. It's almost like a mission statement right there. They even have their graphics and visual aids strewn apart on the right side instead and have the conclusion here in the middle. Totally fine. You do kind of want to be in this order, having it go in chronological order, because that is the direction we read. We read from top left down and then go to the middle and then down again. So I wouldn't mess too much with the order of operations here, but what you include is entirely up to you. Here's an example of a poster from Ohio State. You can see it has the abstract and introduction, and this author actually made different sections based on what they were studying. So their project had several different objectives in looking at different parts of data. So they had one set just for one set of data, one section just for another set, and another set, and another set. And then their conclusions and discussions were very, very brief because they already mostly discussed everything in the back end. Here's an example of a project that was from one of my students back in 2022, I think. I can't remember. It's been so long. This student had a systematic review, and so they don't have methods because all they did was look at case studies. They didn't have a results section because that's not the goal of a systematic review. A systematic review is to tell us all about the different things that they learned. Um, Here they have an introduction, which probably was on the longer side, but that's okay. That their whole project is writing, so they have a bunch of writing. They set up some figures to show us their data in a meaningful way. They set up flowcharts that helped us understand exactly how to read and how to sequence things together. They had the results there. Things were pretty good. Another example, a couple years later, was this one here. This student had created a application for people that have ADHD symptoms that they need to log into a smartphone or something. So they created the framework for an app like that and showed the different parts of their app as the majority of their poster. In the long run, the visual aids here are going to help a whole lot more than just a bunch of words all written down. So don't feel like you have to write a bunch of stuff just to write a bunch of stuff. The poster is meant to be something that helps you visually tell us about what you're talking about in the presentation. I invite you to take some time to go into Canvas and find the folder of all my past biomed innovation projects and look at how they're laid out and what parts they have to it. You can see that each one of them is unique, completely unique, based on the project themselves. Take some time to read some of them, skim some of them, look at how they're structured, look at what kind of pictures they have, whether it's clip art or animations or graphs or pictures of them. That way you can kind of start to understand exactly how you want to put yours together in a way that makes sense for you and you alone. That's all I got for you. It's going to be a process where you and I work together quite a bit. You and I can definitely take up a whiteboard and use a marker to draw it all out if we have to. But let me know if I can help.